thank you today for joining us. We are doing this webinar to stay in touch in these weird times for you, but also for us internally. We would like to keep up to date with all the latest tools and things that SAP is throwing at us. So a warm welcome to you all. We're going to start with a small kickoff, which is happening right now. We'll blast through a few slides explaining to you who we are and why we are doing this to get to the actual fun stuff, which is Visual Studio Code. So we asked ourselves the questions: what is it and what can it do? And maybe what should it do? How can it help us to get to the goal that we want? After that, we have some demos for you to show you how this thing works, stuff under the hood. We also have a special guest for you today. And in the end, we will end with some conclusion that we think about Visual Studio Code. And of course, we will end with the questions and the answers to those questions. First of all, if you have any questions, please leave them in the chat. We will take them and see if we can answer them at the end of the presentation. First of all, a short introduction of innovation. We are a fairly small company situated in the Netherlands. I also already saw some participants from different countries already, so it's very nice to see such a nice broad spectrum of people joining us today. So as I already said, we're a rather small company from the Netherlands. We are in the Utrecht area, and we are innovation. We try to do SAP on a technical standpoint, and what we focus on is the latest and the greatest that SAP has to offer us in the form of user experience and design thinking, robotics, integration, full stack development, and everything, that's in this regard. So, who are talking to you today? These are the people that prepared everything that we want to show you today. Not everyone will be talking, but there's a few on here that are. So first of all, I would like to show and make Joshua visible for you all. Maybe a quick word, Joshua.
Hi everyone, nice to have you here in the webinar, and hope we can answer some questions for you and see what you guys can do with the VSCode.
Thank you. So next up we have Tyler. Tyler is also in the call, and he will also be showing you some stuff today. So Tyler.
Yes. Hello everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Tyler Fincham, SAP developer for 3 years and working for innovation for about 1 year now.
Okay, thanks, Tyler. So if we switch back to the presentation, there's one more slide, and of course we have one more co-presenter here today. I'm going to show him to you real quick because he's really here, and we are honored to have him. So DJ, thanks for joining us. Can you maybe introduce yourself for the people who don't know who you are, for maybe in a few sentences?
Sure. Thank you very much, first of all. Sure. Thank you very much, first of all, for having me. Super honored to be here. My name's DJ Adams. I'm a developer advocate at SAP. I've been working with SAP software for a very long time. And I'm really excited about this subject. First of all, it's a great idea for us all to come together as well, which is fantastic. But the subject matter as well is close to my heart. So I'm looking forward to talking to you more about that. Okay.
Thank you very much. So these are the people who will be talking to you today. We are very honored to have you here, DJ. So let's see you back in a bit. First of all, we would like to start with a small presentation. to give you an understanding of what is Visual Studio Code. Maybe you are an experienced developer in it already, or maybe this is the first time you hear it mentioned. So for us, we in the company already knew the tool, but not really in the SAP context. So what we want to understand is, what does the tool do, and how does it complement our development capabilities for SAP? So one question that we ask ourselves is, we have these new development tools being thrown at us by SAP. I think it's called Business Application Studio. We did a webinar about it about 7 weeks back, I guess, in which we did kind of an unboxing, and we want to see how is Visual Studio Code holding up against this tool. And is it the development tool for you as a developer, the one and only? Should you only be using this, or is there more in the world of SAP development and SAP tools? So and last, we have guest speaker DJ in the house. We would like to hear from him any tips and tricks or cool stuff that he can tell us, and get us in the loop around that. First of all, what is Visual Studio Code? In all beginning, in the essence, it's a code editor, and it's been around for a pretty long time. It's a Microsoft product, and it's actually the most used code editor out there. As you can see in this picture, which is a Stack Overflow poll that was done, it is the most used code editor in the world, maybe, if Stack Overflow is correct in this. But we can assume that it is. Actually, in second place, if I look correctly, it's Visual Studio, which is slightly different environment, but also Microsoft-oriented development environment. So it's free, so everyone can download it and start playing around with it right now if you would like. And it's actually widely adopted for JavaScript and Java and Node.js development. Since recently, SAP seems to have embraced this code editor, and we are seeing it around more and more. So maybe we should start using it actively also. It's gaining in popularity in the SAP community in a big way. So for the people that have joined the webinar of the unboxing of Business Application Studio, this is a familiar picture because we already showed it there also, and we use it in some of our blogs too. And what we try to discover here is what development environment is the best fit for what persona, what developer persona. So what we try to say to you here is that if you are the citizen developer, so you are maybe started as ABAP developer and now moving into cloud or SAP UF5 development, then maybe Web ID, SAP Web ID is the best tool for you. It takes you by the hand. It has a lot of nice visual, wizard-like step-by-step approach to make you do awesome stuff. So maybe for the citizen developer, the Web ID is the best fit. What we saw in the Business Application Studio webinar was that for the hardcore developer, the cloud mainly developer, so cloud application programming model, but also Fiori development. It's quite a nice tool. It's not finished yet, but they are quite on the right road, on the right way. Is that even a saying in English? Being on the right road? Maybe. Yeah, I think so. And what we predicted was for full stack development, like also doing ABAP and also doing maybe some HANA native development. Yeah, maybe VSCode will be the development environment for you. This is also what we want to discover with you today. So now that we have some basic understanding of what it is and what we think the best fit would be, I would like to go to the next slide, which is the first slide for the demos that we have prepared for you. And for this, I would like to hand over to Joshua. And I will unmute him now. And he will talk to you about the actual insights of VS Code. Joshua, I think it's all yours.
All right. Yes. Thanks. So we made a couple of demos, and one will be also done by DJ. And to cramp up everything in a short period of time, we make the assumption that you already have VS Code up and running. So the prerequisites for this are installation of VS Code, certain plugins that are needed to develop, Node.js, Yeoman generators to create some templates, and a sub-cloud account. Okay, so for these demos, we have already done this, so we won't be showing this to you. But at the last slide, so this whole slide deck will be published, and at the last slide, you will get all the links to all the blogs, how to get going with VS Code and SAP. So let's go to the first one. So the first thing we want to do is explore ABAP in VS Code.
After your setup is done, you can connect to the system, starting the command ABAP fs connect to an ABAP system via the command palette. This will open the file system of your SAP system in the current workspace. From here you can open your system library and see all packages on the connected system. You can also see the transports which are assigned to your user. It's good to know that it only displays the transports. You cannot create, modify, or assign transports from within VS Code. We've added some objects to our favorites. Let's open the first one. What we see here is basically the source code of the class, which is the same as if you were to open the source code in SAP GUI. At the top we have our class definition followed by the class implementation. Also notice the helpful syntax highlighting. The help function is also in place and functions just like it does in SAP GUI by pressing F1. Now we're going to create a new program in VS Code. Open the command palette and type create ABAP. This will show the command ABAP fs create object, and we'll use that one. We'll say we want to create a program, give a name, and a description, and select the package we want to put it in. And there we go. We've got our program right there. In the top right corner, we can even activate our program from VS Code. Let's go back to our previous code and illustrate how well code completion works and navigation. Here we see code completion on syntax, on variables, tables, and other objects like functions. When it comes to navigation, it does work, but does it make your work easier? We can navigate to functions, and then navigation to class and methods or programs will work the same way. And we can navigate to tables by pressing go to definition. Here we see the implementation of the table. In my opinion, just seeing the raw implementation is a setback compared to the structured layout we have in SAP GUI. To test our code, we will have to open it in SAP GUI. VSCode doesn't allow us to run ABAP programs. It also doesn't allow us to debug our programs. So basically, VSCode is a flat code editor. From our perspective, it's definitely not a substitution for SAP GUI yet.
Here we are in VS Code with our project open. Keep in mind that we already have the Fiori Tools extension pack and UI5 Language Assistant installed and ready to go, and we generated a SAP UI5 Freestyle template using Yeoman as well. This is functionality from the application wizard, which is included in the Fiori Tools extension pack. If you want to see a video on how to do that later on, we have one available which we'll share the link to in the chat for you guys. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and showcase some of the VS Code extension power, starting with the code completion. Let's go ahead and open our company's XML view here. Alright, let's create a basic list. First thing we have to do is get rid of this content tag here, because it's not properly opened and closed. Let's just delete it and start typing. As we can see, we get a suggestion menu here. Let's select content, and there you go, it auto-completes it for us. Now let's create our list control, and there's our suggestion menu. Now we can select list by clicking it or just using tab or enter. There it is. Okay, next up we're going to bind the list to our data model using the Service Modeler extension. To do that, we just right click on our web app folder and select Open Service Modeler. Here we can view our data services and entities. So let's look at our company code entity here. And here we can see all its properties. Comp code, companies. Now let's go back to our view. Now let's bind its items to our company code set. Okay, so we binded the list items to the company code set, as we can see here. Next we have to create our items aggregation. That's just another XML tag. And let's create a standard list item control. There we go. Now we're going to bind its title property to company name. So let's make a title property and bind it to company name. Comp name. Now let's create a description property and find something nice to bind that to. Let's do company code. So company code. Okay, we have a simple list here with some properties binded. Let's go ahead and run it to see if it works properly. To do that, let's open the terminal. New terminal. And let's type npm start. Hit enter. Okay, so here's our list running on our local host here. And as we can see, everything is working properly. Here's our company name and company code. And I think this works fantastic. What do you guys think? All right, so moving on to the next thing I want to showcase, which will be generating a Fiori Elements template. Let's close out of this. Exit the terminal. All right, now let's open the command palette and type in Yeoman UI Generator. And let's select a Fiori Elements application. Next. Let's select a list report object page. Select a data source. All right, let me paste in our OData URL. And paste in the credentials as well. And select our main entity. Let's go with company code set. And fill in our project attributes. For the name, let's go with Fiori Elements Companies. Application title, let's go with Fiori Elements Companies. For the application namespace, let's go with I8 and finish. Alright, we get the notification saying our project has been generated. Let's open it in a new workspace. And here's our generated template with all our familiar files and folders for a Fiori Elements application. And since this is Fiori Elements, in order to make changes to the UI, we're going to have to use annotations. Now what can help us with that is the Guided Development extension. To open that, let's right-click on our Annotations folder and select SAP Fiori Tools, Open Guided Development. Okay, so from here we can select a guide that will help us implement something on our list report page. For example, we can add a new filter field to the Smart Filter bar, or add a new column to a table. Let's select this one to keep things simple. Let's click Start Guide. Now it's asking us for which entity type do we want to configure our annotation for adding a new column. Let's select Company Code. Then it asks us which property would we like to have displayed from our chosen entity. Let's select Company Name. So here's our annotation. Now let's open our annotation XML and click Apply. There we go. That applies it to our annotation XML. Now let's run this to see what we got. So npm start. Okay, so here's our application. Let's click Go. And here's our company name column. So this works great. See how easy it is with guided development to add annotations? Let's try another one. This time company code. Click Apply. Back to our local host. Click Go. And there it is, our company code column. When we click on a line item, we navigate to the Object Details page. As we can see, it's not implemented yet, but you can add data to this page the same way, using annotations and the guided development. So what do you guys think? I think it works really well, and I can definitely see myself using this in a future project. Alright, moving on to the last thing I want to show you guys, it's the page map. To open the page map, we right-click on our web app folder and select Show Page Map. So this is the page map. The page map visualizes the pages of our Fiori Elements application, and you can use it to model your application as well. However, extension projects are not supported in VS Code at this moment. At least there's no tools for them available yet.
All right, guys, that was Fiori. So the last demo we want to do is VS Code with Cloud Application programming. And it will be hosted by no other than DJ Adams. So I want to give the stage to DJ.
So this is a short demo about the Visual Studio Code, VSCode extension for development with SAP Cloud Application Programming Model, CAP. The extension for VS Code for CAP development has been around since 2018. VS Code itself, I think, has been around a couple of years longer than that. And it was announced in 2018, originally available on the tools.hana.ondemand.com site, but more recently, specifically in July of this year, the extension moved from that tools.hana.ondemand.com site to the VS Code marketplace itself. You can see more details of that in the release notes for CAP itself on the CAP.io website, cap.cloud.sap. And along with this little announcement, these release notes in particular for July 2020 contain a lot of information about what's new for the extension, and there's a ton of stuff. So here it is available on the Visual Studio Marketplace. You can hit the install to install it into your particular instance of VS Code. We're going to explore a few of these features, really high level, just to give you an idea of what it's all about and what it provides for you. Let me switch to my favorite environment, which is of course the terminal. And we're going to use the CDS command line tool to initiate a new project. I'm going to call it inno, which creates a directory. I'm going to invoke VS Code on that directory, and it's going to open up that directory in VS Code. You can see, as we might expect, the app, DB, and SIR folders here. That's a classic sort of pattern for our CAP application. You can see already that VS Code itself is saying, oh, there's some recommendations that you might want to have a look at using for this particular project, looking at the files within it. It recommends ESLint and Prettier. I'm not using those right now, but while I am here, let me just show you what I've got installed on this particular VS Code. Let me close all these tabs for now. Make this a little bit bigger. So I've got a fair amount. I've got the SAP Fiori tools extension pack. I've got some tools from some folks from the community, like this one here from Jodel. I've got the most important extension ever, which is of course the Vim emulation for VS Code, and the one we're talking about here is the CAP extension. The CAP extension has lots of features, and there are some sort of really general features as well. If you get stuck with this particular extension, you can use the command palette in VS Code, report an issue, which is a generic VS Code facility. Say it's an issue with an extension, in particular it's the CAP extension, and it gives us a little link here which will take us to the SAP community, where you can ask a question, and it prompts you for the sorts of information you should supply when asking the question to help people help you. Anyway, that's enough of that. We'll close that. We can also see from the command palette, I just noticed it there, you can also call up the release notes directly in VS Code itself. For me, one of the most important aspects of VS Code, of course, is it gives you sort of direct access to a shell. In a similar way to one of the best features, in my opinion, of the SAP Business Application Studio. It gives you access to a proper shell environment as well. I'm going to use this shell environment just to use a CDS command to flesh out this app a little bit. CDS add samples, and now we've got in the DB directory, we've got some data in the form of some CSV records there. And we've got a data model, and we've also got a service definition. Immediately we can see that we get lovely syntax highlighting. So that's one of the features, one of the basic features one might expect. Notice as well, we've got this little outline here, which we can also see here. So this is also a facility that's brought to us. It's a built-in facility with VS Code, and then CAP uses that facility to expand on the things that we're looking at here. So if we have a look at another feature, another really basic feature, I can hit Control Space and call up, a number of snippets. I'm going to use the doc snippet to start off some documentation. So material for gaining knowledge. That's a good description of the books entity, I guess. Now, the immediate impact of that is obvious. Of course, you've got documentation. It's quite easy to write that. But also, when you hover over, you get the description of what that is, and that, of course, is not so useful when you're directly below what you're looking at anyway. But, and this is a way for us to explore another feature. When you're looking at a usage or a reference to this particular books entity, you can also see what that books description is. So these are another two features that the CAP extension gives you, an ability to jump to the definition of something you're looking at, or jump to where that something is used. So if we hit go to references here, it'll take us to the reference to that books entity in this service, and we can see there as well when we hover over, oh yeah, of course, it's material for gaining knowledge, right? So that's great. So those are really basic features of the CAP extension. So let's dig in a little bit more. Let's start to add something to the data model first of all, and explore just by doing what it might give us. In fact, let's move this terminal down a little bit. Why don't we add another entity? And we can already see we have the facility to call up various sort of helpers and snippets and so on and completion. So I could say entity, authors. I might want to use a CUID. In fact, no, let's not use a CUID for now, but let's add a name as a string, as key. And notice as well, there we go, there's sort of completion of types. Which is really convenient. What we'll also do, let's just add a relationship here. If we say author of a given book is an association to one, it's quite nice to actually realize that it's not just two. You can say to one authors there, and we'll go down here and say, what are we saying here? Books, the books that the author has written, association to many books on books dot, and then we get completion there as well. Okay, what do we want to pick? Of course, we want to pick that for the relationship equals self equals me. And notice as well, we can already start seeing another feature of the CAP extension, which will tell us, if there is something syntactically incorrect. I mean, let's just do something a little bit more basic. If I've misspelt that, it'll say, there's something not quite right going on there. And in fact, if you hit F8, it'll tell us exactly what's wrong, where it's wrong, and the actual detail of the problem. So let's just undo that and save that. Now, if we have in fact, what we could do is we could now go into the service definition, and I'm going to say entity writers as projection on authors. Now, it's saying, well, I don't really understand quite what you mean by authors. That's why it's underlined that with a squiggly line. But notice another sort of built-in feature of VS Code, which the CAP extension is making use of, is this quick fix feature. So if we click this quick fix here, it tells us, well, yeah, I can help you out here. I can bring in the author's entity from that model. So I'm going to click that, and it'll quick fix it for us. So as you can see now, it's added to the using statement here, and it's brought in specifically my.bookshop.authors, and of course it's reformatted it as well. Talking of reformatting, you've got the general format document feature, another feature of the CAP extension, and that will format it in a really nice way. If you're used to using tools like Prettier, for example, for JavaScript, or YAML or JSON, you'll appreciate what this is all about. And you can see it's left even a little gap here to write our own little annotation if we want to do as well. So that's another great feature. So I'm going to save that as well. And yeah, that's pretty much it in terms of what I wanted to explore in this really short demo. There's plenty more from a features perspective. One more thing we'll do. In fact, let's just start out by saying CDS watch. To start up a little sort of, in-memory service. And while we're waiting for that to start, let's go here and add, do you want to accept it? Yes, thank you very much, Mac OS. And we'll add a new file here, and we'll call it the same name as the CDS definition for the service, cat service.js, which will give us the ability to load, or write rather, a bit of a custom implementation. So we'll say module.exports equals, it takes a it gets a server object or a service object, and we'll say serve dot, after a read of a, what have we got here, books, then what do we get? We get some results passed to this anonymous function here, and we'll just say console.log results. Okay, that'll do for now. So let's save that. Okay, and let's open up this little link here. We can see that there's the familiar CAP service page, and we can go to books, for example, and we can see the books. We can see there's no authors there because I've not filled any CSV values for the authors entity for the in-memory persistence, but that doesn't matter. Let's go back here, and instead let's close that. We actually saw just then, I think, there it is. There's the result of the console.log, but instead of looking at it there, let's set a breakpoint. One of the things that the CAP extension does really well for VS Code users is provide really comfortable facilities for debugging. So I'm going to set a debug statement here, a breakpoint statement rather, and then start running it in debug mode, which I can use with F5, and that will start the CAP service up running again. You can see it's running now on the debug console rather than in the terminal. Now, if I go back to the browser and hit refresh, we get stopped at this breakpoint here. So we can now start to, let's clear this out of the way, we can start to examine things. There's the results, results. Let's just have a look at the second result. Results.1 is Jane Eyre. Let's change the title. Results 1.title equals banana, and then continue. And we can say, we can have a look down here. There we go, banana. We've changed the title of the second book. So this really, really just scratches the surface of the wonderful features that the CAP extension for VS Code gives us as developers, not only for design time, but also for runtime contexts. Okay, that's it. Thanks for watching.
Okay, thank you very much, DJ. I will take back over now. And I will mute you, DJ. Judging by the enthusiasm of DJ, we should all stop using any other editor and start using VS Code right now. No more other editors. Looking at the chat, we can see that we have had some more technical lagging and other things going on, which is a bit of a shame. We can't really do anything about it at this time. But be aware that you will be sent a recording of this, and we guess the recording will be just fine. So maybe for the sake of speed, you can rewatch some of this very lightning fast development and debugging of DJ in a later stage. So for now, we would like to continue with the conclusion of what we think of VS Code and SAP Development. So when we look at it, VS Code is an amazing tool, but you are in control of this tool. So everything regarding updates and everything regarding extensions, you are in control as a developer, which is a good thing, but it can be a bit overwhelming for a beginning developer. So our advice would be install the editor, start working in it, and get comfortable, because only then you will really see the advantages that it will offer you. In the end, when we tried it for ABAP development, for example, we don't think it's good for a productive use, right? We don't have a GUI available that shows us all that we see in SAP GUI. It's a flat code editor for that sake, which is pretty okay for that, but not in an actual productive use. At least that's what we think. One subject that we can't really be sure about is HANA native development. What we've seen is there's a lot possible. You can connect, you can do your developments, but it's mostly for your local machine. So maybe it's about the same as for ABAP development. you can do it. You can use it for your local environment. You can do all the developments that you would like, but in the end, there's things missing. There's no, there's things missing. That's what, at least what we think. If you look specifically at Fiori or the cloud or cloud application programming development, everything is perfect. If you get the hang of this development environment, then this is the development environment for you to use. So that's our conclusion regarding this tool. If we then get back to these personas that we've seen before, what we see then is that Visual Studio Code is a perfect add-on for your other development environments, especially if you're like a full stack developer also doing ABAP developments. Yeah, you will probably still need the SAP GUI to perform all the tasks that you need to do. But the rest you can easily do in Visual Studio Code. Same goes for the hardcore developer doing cloud. Maybe you will need Business Application Studio for some things, but most of the things you can do perfectly fine in Visual Studio Code. So we have one more thing prepared for you, which is a small interview also with DJ Adams. So he's not done yet. What I will do now is I will mute myself and I will unmute Tyler and DJ Adams, and they will perform some interview together. So good luck, guys. I will try to switch between you two as good as I can. So yeah, Tyler, you're up.
All right. Hi, guys. Okay, so we just saw a few demos working with UI5 and ABAP, and an amazing demo, CAP demo from DJ. Thank you, DJ. That was cool. So I think we have a pretty good impression so far. But as Imke said, we prepared a few interview questions for DJ. So let's start with an easy one. We are already established that VS Code is your favorite editor. You said earlier, I believe. But is there anything you dislike and want to see changed?
Well, is VS Code my favorite editor? I don't think so. I think it doesn't come as a surprise to some people that Vim is my favorite editor, and that's my go-to. But I think the point is that I use Vim a lot. I use VS Code a lot. I use the Business Application Studio a lot, and I switch between depending on my the circumstances, where I am, what I'm trying to do, and everything. But I would always default to terminal-based, proper text-based tools like Vim and so on. But yeah, I don't think there is a one-size editor fits all, which is an excuse I have for using all these different things.
Right. Thank you. Right. Okay. So how often do you use VS Code, and for what type of projects do you like to using it?
I do use VS Code for CAP when I do like the debugging facilities that CAP gives me, or the CAP extension sort of embraces with VS Code. It's really comfortable. But to be honest, the rest of the facilities that I demonstrated, because of the beautiful way that the teams within SAP have built the extension for VS Code using the language server protocol, I can enjoy all those features in Vim. So I've got my Vim setup attached to the language server, and I've got the VS Code extension, CAP code that anybody can use, supplying me with information about syntax highlighting and also about errors and code snippets and so on, and command completion. I've got that working in Vim. So to be honest, for CAP development, I sort of switch between the two.
All right, awesome. All right, let's move on to a bit more difficult question. So VS Code offers a huge number of extensions you can download. Some officially created by SAP, and some are created by the community. The ones from the community can be useful for people who know what they're doing, but for new users, they can be quite confusing at times. Do you think SAP could or should do something to manage this?
That's a really good question, and I think the answer to the last part of the question is no, or at least this is my opinion. It's the same sort of question that appears or occurs for example, NPM, right? The Node Package Manager. There are extensions. Sorry, I don't know. I hope the audio is okay. The rain is so loud outside; it's hitting the window. I can't hear me. So with NPM, there are packages created by the community, and there are packages created by SAP. And as many of us know, recently we SAP started pushing our packages direct to NPM rather than our own registry. And we have a similar challenge there. Do we use? Does somebody use an SAP package? Does he use a community package? But I think we have to embrace that as the wonder of community, right? My advice would be, if it's got the SAP stamp on it, then have a look at it with all for serious consideration, because that's probably what you want. And when you once you start becoming comfortable with using these packages and also understanding how a package works, what it looks like inside and so on, then you can start venturing out and saying, well, yeah, okay, there's somebody over in the community that's built this package or built this extension VS Code. I sort of follow them. I know what they're up to. I know that, how their mind thinks. And yeah, I will take that extension because I know it's probably going to be what I'm looking for. I'll give you an example. Jadel Kailan, he's got a package out there, Blue Phoenix, and I'm using that, an extension on VS Code because it does what I want, and I've had a look at it as well. I don't think it's an easy answer, but I don't think SAP should be trying to control, police, filter anything.
No. Okay. Thanks. Thank you. So you don't think SAP should exclusively offer the VS Code extensions? It should stay a community effort, or?
I think in a way this is part of the whole sort of SAP open source community effort, right, as a whole. So we're seeing more and more community contributions on projects that we've already open sourced, or we're putting on the SAP samples, or we're doing on the live streaming that the developer advocates do, for example. So we're seeing sort of contributions grow in number in those sorts of things, and I see that I see the contributions to VS Code extensions in a similar light, in a similar bucket, in a way, because I think we're all on the start of a journey here. This is something it's quite new from a community cooperation perspective, which is great, but it's also quite new from a VS Code perspective. Don't forget that VS Code is really a really cool IDE, right? But it's only been on the scenes for 3 or 4 years, and before that, the really cool editor was Atom, and before that, the really cool editor was Sublime Text. Before that, the really cool editor was Eclipse. So there's a balance, I think, to be had as well between embracing one particular IDE too much and holding back. And I think we're still feeling our way as to how best to do that as a collective, SAP and community.
All right, thank you. So since the popularity of VS Code is rising, like you said, it's the new Atom, and so on. What does this mean for Eclipse as one of the SAP development tools? Will Eclipse still have a place in the future?
Will Eclipse be Eclipse? That's the question, I suppose. I don't think. Well, all right. In one sense, let's be technical for a second. In one sense, Eclipse as a project, is still alive and well, because the Business Application Studio and many online IDEs, like the one from Google, like the CodeSpace, they're all based on Eclipse there, right? So the heart of where Eclipse came from is still with us. The spirit is still with us. But if you're referring to the use of Eclipse with the ABAP development tools for ABAP development, I'm honestly not sure what the roadmap is for there. I've not done ABAP development for a long time. There may be some people on the call that might be able to answer that a little bit better than I can. However, I personally, completely selfishly, thinks it makes a lot of sense, thinks it makes a lot of sense to look at the ABAP development tools and say, well, how independent are these from Eclipse? How portable might these be? I think the answer is actually there's a lot of work in moving this to another editor. So I think Eclipse will be around for a good while. And even if something new comes along, I can imagine that the support for Eclipse and ADT will remain for a while.
Right. Thank you. So next question, do you have any exclusive tips and tricks while developing in VS Code?
Yes, use a terminal. Use the terminal. Embrace the future. No, in all seriousness, like one of my super all-time favorite things about the SAP Business Application Studio, right, and other online, and also VS Code in its sort of guise as the code space editor on GitHub. Okay, it's basically VS Code in the background, or the heart of VS Code, is that it gives you a real terminal, a real shell to work in. I saw there was a question on the chat earlier on about deploying to SAP Cloud Platform from VS Code. My answer to that would be use the terminal, use the tools supplied on the command line, because you are the most powerful and it's the most flexible. And with VS Code, it's the same, right? Whether that's running a VS Code sort of instance in the cloud or on your PC or whatever. So there's my tip. Embrace the terminal, embrace the future.
All right, awesome. I like that a lot. Okay. So keeping the time in mind here, let's move on to our last question. And this one might sound kind of weird in English, but bear with me here. How do you like Stroop waffles?
Oh, I'd completely forgotten. So
no.
You mean these? And this is
yes.
not me having I've had this on my cup, but my cup of coffee has gone cold, so it's still. They're the best. They're the best biscuits in the world. So yeah, awesome. That was easy. That was an easy answer.
All right, that's awesome. All right, thanks. So I think that's it for the questions for now. So I'd like to give the word back to Inke.
Yeah, thank you very much for this amazing interview. It really adds to this webinar. Your answer on the terminal was a little bit too quick for my liking, DJ. I'm still getting the hang of it. Thank you very much for joining us and watching our webinar. We are doing one every once in a while, so look forward to the next one. Maybe another one with DJ, maybe someone with another special guest. Let's see how we can work with that. Once again, we are Innovation. If you would like to know more about us, please look us up, contact us, and we will gladly be available for you. And once again, thank you very much for watching. I hope to see you again sometime soon.